This is the story of a heavily embossed piece of cardstock, a locked cathedral side door, and a seating chart that felt exactly like a guillotine. Imagine the scene inside the magnificent nave of a royal chapel. Moments before the arrival of the global press for a major family wedding, Queen Camilla, a woman accustomed to dictating the visual hierarchy of the British monarchy, stood frozen as she stared at the master seating arrangement. In less than 60 seconds, the carefully constructed illusion of her absolute supremacy collapsed. What she realized behind those ancient stone walls was a devastating truth. She may wear the crown, but she does not control the bloodline. And her family had just been structurally and permanently banished to the margins. What you are about to hear is not a tale of tabloid gossip or a petty dispute over wedding invitations. This is a forensic examination of high-stakes institutional warfare. We are going to unpack the secret, desperate power grab Camilla attempted in the dark. How Prince William and Princess Anne uncovered the deeply buried paper trail and the silent, ruthless retaliation that followed. This is the story of how the future king and the Princess Royal used the cold, administrative machinery of the crown to execute a flawless checkmate, leaving Camilla with the crushing realization of her own institutional powerlessness. To understand the sheer magnitude of this visual humiliation, we must first step back and look at the empire Camilla thought she had built. For 3 decades, she played the longest and most calculated game in modern royal history. She survived the intense global backlash of the 1990s. She methodically oversaw the institutional erasure of Princess Diana's legacy within the royal residences, replacing memories with her own loyal staff and curated aesthetics. She operated under the absolute certainty that she had King Charles completely controlled. Following her coronation, she felt utterly untouchable. Viewers noticed her increasingly assertive posture and her subtle but relentless efforts to elevate her non-royal children into the highly protected visual narrative of the monarchy. She believed that by normalizing their presence at the center of state and family events, she could eventually secure their social and financial futures within the permanent royal apparatus. She assumed that her title granted her absolute immunity from the ancient, unyielding rules of the crown. But absolute power requires absolute control over the historical narrative. As the royal family prepared for a highly significant gathering, the upcoming wedding of Princess Anne's son, Peter Phillips, Camilla saw the ultimate opportunity to permanently alter the visual DNA of the British monarchy. What appears to be true based on the sudden restructuring of palace protocol is that Camilla initiated a quiet but highly ambitious power grab targeting the master seating chart and security clearance protocols for the event. This was not a routine request for extra +1s. It was a calculated attempt to elevate her non-royal lineage into the inner sanctum of the crown. She sought to quietly authorize the placement of her children within the exclusive blood royal enclosure, the sacred seating area traditionally reserved strictly for direct descendants of the sovereign. The maneuver was even darker than simple favoritism. To make physical and visual room for her family at the epicenter of the global broadcast, Camilla attempted to administratively relegate the Spencer family, the blood relatives of Princess Diana and Prince William, to the outer nave. It was an attempt to physically and symbolically push Diana's legacy out of the royal frame, ensuring that the world would only see the Parker Bowles family surrounding the king. This was a staggering exploitation of the crown's resources and a direct, undeniable threat to the historical integrity of the monarchy. But she profoundly underestimated the forensic vigilance of the Prince of Wales and the fierce, uncompromising protection of the Princess Royal. When William assumed his role as the executor of the monarchy's future, he initiated a quiet, comprehensive audit of all major event protocols and discretionary seating allocations. He is a man shaped by the silent, enduring grief for his mother and fiercely protective of his wife, Catherine, who has offered nothing but uncomplaining sacrifice for the institution. William operates through the crushing weight of protocol. The discovery of Camilla's seating manipulation did not come from a leaked rumor in the corridors. It came from the meticulous auditing of the Lord Chamberlain's office. When officials connected to William's executive team flagged the highly irregular, seating anomalies and the sudden downgrading of the Spencer family's security clearances, they did not scream. They did not leak dramatic stories to the press. They simply took the paper trail directly to Princess Anne. If William is the executor of the monarchy's future, Anne is the unyielding guardian of its history. Princess Anne does not care about public relations or royal vanity. She cares about institutional survival and the strict adherence to the order of precedence. When the mother of the groom saw the quiet administrative requests Camilla had submitted, she viewed the attempted manipulation with cold, absolute disgust. What happened next was a masterclass in the weaponization of administrative protocol. William and Anne did not confront Camilla in a shouting match. That is the behavior of the desperate. Instead, they weaponized the very system she had tried to exploit. They drafted an internal structural realignment of the event's security and seating logistics quietly executed as a routine update. It looked on paper like standard housekeeping regarding cathedral capacity and broadcast sightlines. But buried within the legalistic language was a total dismantling of Camilla's carefully constructed empire. Invoking the absolute authority of the order of precedence and the blood royal protection protocols, William and Anne formally stripped all non-working, non-blood royal family members of inner sanctum clearance. They quietly reverted the master seating chart, locking it behind encrypted administrative access that required the explicit countersignature of the Prince of Wales to alter. They restored the Spencer family to their rightful honored position near the altar. And most devastatingly, they authorized the immediate reissuance of color-coded security passes for the entire event. Camilla's children were assigned the lowest-tier visitor clearance. The execution was completely invisible until the exact moment the trap snapped shut. The realization hit Camilla on the morning of the wedding, resulting in a visual humiliation of the highest order. As the Queen Consort arrived at the magnificent cathedral, expecting her triumphant visual narrative to unfold before the global press, she was forced to witness the cold reality of her institutional powerlessness. She watched, paralyzed by protocol, as her children approached the VIP entrance, only to be politely but firmly intercepted by elite royal protection officers. The officers scanned their newly issued downgraded security passes and, with devastating, unyielding politeness, directed the Queen's own bloodline away from the grand doors. They were escorted to a secondary non-royal side entrance designated for standard guests. Every side door exit Camilla's allies were suddenly forced to use was forensic proof of shifting power. Standing inside the cathedral, Camilla stared at the heavily embossed name cards in the exclusive blood royal enclosure. Her family's names were entirely absent. In their place sat the Spencer family, radiating the quiet, untouchable dignity of Diana's true legacy. Camilla was trapped in a gilded cage. She could not scream. She could not demand the officers step aside because they were operating strictly under the legal security protocols authorized by the future king. She realized that the absolute power she thought she wielded was merely an illusion, and the walls of the institution she had fought so ruthlessly to conquer were now closing in on her. And the most terrifying part of this entire ordeal was just beginning. Because when she finally turned to the one man who had always protected her, the King of England himself, begging for him to intervene and stop his son, she was about to discover a truth far more devastating than any locked side door. When Queen Camilla retreated from the heavily guarded nave and intercepted King Charles, in the private royal anteroom just moments before the procession was scheduled to begin, she did not approach him as a supportive spouse. She approached him as a desperate strategist demanding immediate institutional rescue. In her trembling hands, she held the downgraded visitor security passes and the revised master seating chart, the undeniable forensic proof that her children had been abruptly and deliberately banished to the margins of the wedding. For 30 years, this was the exact dynamic that had guaranteed her survival. Whenever the rigid rules of the palace attempted to marginalize her, she would turn to Charles. And Charles, blinded by a lifelong uncompromising devotion, would always step in to shield her, overriding his advisors, his mother, and his own family, to ensure she was elevated to the highest possible position. She laid the administrative paperwork in front of the king, fully expecting him to summon the event coordinators, reprimand the Prince of Wales, and demand the immediate unrestricted reinstatement of her family into the exclusive blood royal enclosure. Instead, Charles looked down at the newly revised security protocols. He saw the seal of the Lord Chamberlain and the unmistakable countersignature of his son, Prince William, legally executing the strict adherence to the order of precedence. And then the king looked at his wife, and he did absolutely nothing. The heavy silence that filled that private stone anteroom was the most devastating psychological climax of Camilla's entire royal existence. Charles did not rage against his son. He did not offer words of righteous anger to defend his wife's dignity. Accounts of the shifting power dynamics within the palace suggest that Charles, physically exhausted and deeply aware of his own fragile mortality, simply accepted the paperwork. He recognized the flawless bureaucratic perfection of William and Anne's trap. The future monarch and the Princess Royal had not explicitly insulted Camilla. They had simply enforced a strict, legally binding protocol that protected the crown's historical bloodline from private exploitation. Charles knew that if he attempted to override these integrity guidelines just minutes before a globally broadcast event, he would be effectively confirming to the state, the church, and the public that the monarchy was willing to violate its own ancient constitution merely to satisfy the vanity of the Queen Consort. To force William into submission in front of the global press would trigger an unprecedented constitutional civil war. The king was forced to choose between protecting the historical sovereignty of the crown and protecting his wife's secret attempt to hoard social equity for her non-royal children. In that quiet, unremarkable moment of surrender, Charles chose the institution. For Camilla, this silence was a terminal diagnosis for her influence. The crushing realization that Charles would no longer save her triggered a profound commercial and institutional desperation. To the outside world, she is the Queen Consort, a woman draped in priceless diamonds, waving to the crowds from the balcony of Buckingham Palace. But behind closed doors, the forensic reality of her situation had been terrifyingly exposed. She owns virtually nothing of consequence, and now she was brutally reminded that she does not even own the social currency of the family she married into. The titles she aggressively pursued for decades cannot alter her DNA, and they cannot manufacture institutional equity for her children. Tom and Laura are not members of the firm. They are merely guests of the estate. She had spent decades behaving like the absolute owner of the crown's legacy, only to realize that she is merely a temporary tenant, relying entirely on the grace of the estate's true heirs. The moment William and Anne locked the master seating chart, her ability to dictate the visual narrative of the monarchy crashed to absolute zero. The psychological toll of this silent execution was magnified exponentially as the cathedral doors finally opened and the royal family took their seats. While Camilla was suffocating under this administrative siege, confined by the humiliating reality of her family's banishment to the side aisles, a new order effortlessly cemented itself at the absolute center of the royal framework. The void left by her dismantled authority was immediately filled by the natural, unforced ascension of Catherine, the Princess of Wales. Catherine did not need to orchestrate secret seating arrangements or manipulate security protocols to secure her standing. Her power is not transactional. It is an undeniable reality forged through years of uncomplaining sacrifice, flawless duty, and the production of the direct royal heirs. The contrast of schadenfreude in that cathedral was staggering. While Camilla frantically tried to secure legacy lifelines in the shadows, Catherine simply occupied the space she had rightfully earned. The shifting power dynamic was not broadcast in press releases, but in devastating visual cues that palace insiders and the global media immediately understood. As the cameras panned across the sacred blood royal enclosure, the world saw the Prince and Princess of Wales radiating a quiet, absolute authority that requires no enforcement. And seated in the highly prestigious positions right behind them, precisely where Camilla had attempted to place her own children, was the Spencer family. These details matter immensely. Every time the global broadcast cut to the Spencer family sitting in honored proximity to the future king, it was a carefully coded message to the world and a direct psychological strike against Camilla. It was visual proof of who held the master keys to the kingdom. William was not just managing a wedding guest list, he was displaying the ultimate endorsement of his mother's enduring legacy. Forcing Camilla to sit in the front row, politely holding her service program while knowing her own children had been pushed out the side door, is a level of psychological warfare that requires no spoken words. It is the ultimate, silent correction of the historical record. What looked like a routine administrative update regarding cathedral capacity was actually the final locking of the gate. What the world witnessed was William executing the justice his mother never received. He did not do it through explosive television interviews or tell-all memoirs. He did it with chilling, methodical institutional discipline. For decades, William endured the presence of the woman who tormented Diana, maintaining a mask of polite acceptance for the sake of the crown and his father's fragile happiness. He watched Camilla systematically attempt to exploit the royal archives and public events, erasing Diana's physical memory and attempting to establish a dynasty for her non-royal children. But William never forgot, and he never forgave. Now, holding the absolute financial and administrative power of the monarchy in his hands, he is dismantling Camilla's legacy brick by brick. He is cleaning house before he even takes the keys. He is protecting the physical and visual history of the crown from being hijacked. And he is ensuring that his wife is permanently protected from the exact same institutional sabotage that destroyed his mother. As the king's reign inevitably moves toward its twilight, Camilla's future has already been written. The illusion of her absolute power has been permanently shattered, replaced by the cold reality of a downgraded security pass. When William officially ascends the throne, she will face the ultimate downgrade. As a dowager queen without the active protection of her husband, her relevance, her funding, and her access to the inner sanctum of the monarchy will exist entirely at the mercy of King William and Queen Catherine, the woman who clawed her way to the highest peak of British. Royalty will find herself quietly managed out of the institution, banished to the margins of royal history. She will be remembered not as the triumphant matriarch she believed herself to be, but as a temporary liability that the monarchy eventually and ruthlessly corrected. Thank you for exploring this deep dive into the hidden realities of royal power. If you found this forensic analysis compelling, please make sure to subscribe to the channel. Leave a like on this video and share your thoughts in the comments below. Let me know what you think of William and Anne's silent execution of revenge. We will continue to bring you the unvarnished truth behind the velvet ropes of the British establishment. Until next time, remember that in the halls of absolute power, the loudest statements are always made in total silence.